When I was 63, I was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer. The oncologist who told me was a kind man. He chose his words carefully. He said, "We are looking at somewhere between 12 and 18 months, and I want you to use that time well." That was 38 years ago. My name is Margaret Cole. I am 101 years old. I live alone in a small apartment in Portland, Oregon. I cook my own meals. I walk every morning before the street gets busy. I do my own grocery shopping, carry my own bags, and I have not once asked my children to do for me what I can still do for myself. I left the care facility my daughter arranged for me 7 years ago, against the advice of 2 physicians, and I have not looked back once. I don't want anyone to go through what I went through. That is why I am making this video. I am going to tell you everything. The foods, the habits, the things I changed that my doctors eventually stopped arguing with, because the results were sitting in front of them at every appointment. I am going to tell you the practical things, the things you can start tomorrow, the things that cost nothing and require no prescription. But I am also going to tell you the part that is harder to say, the part I kept mostly to myself for a long time, the part about what I believe accounts for the other 70% of why I am still here. Some of you will not know what to do with that part. That is fine. You don't have to do anything with it except hear it. You are old enough to decide for yourself what is true. Stay with me until the end. The order of what I am about to share matters. Each piece connects to the next. What I did wrong first. And I want to be honest with you in a way that health content almost never is. I spent the first year after my diagnosis doing everything correctly on paper and continuing to decline. I followed the oncology protocol without question. I had surgery. I went through 4 rounds of chemotherapy. I lost 29 pounds. I lost my hair. I read every book I could find, watched every video, called every specialist a will, meaning friend suggested. I drank things I couldn't afford and didn't enjoy. I took supplements by the handful. I did all of it with the grim, mechanical determination of someone who has converted her fear into a checklist and is working through it before the end. And I kept getting worse. I want to be clear about something. I am not here to tell you that medicine is wrong. The surgery saved my immediate life. The team at my hospital were skilled, dedicated people who genuinely cared. I am not arguing against any of that. What I am telling you is that I was putting everything I had into an engine that had a fundamental problem I had not yet identified. And until I identified that problem, nothing else was going to work the way it was supposed to. Let me start with the practical things because they matter. They are real, and for many of you watching this, they may be exactly enough. The first thing I changed was water. I was chronically dehydrated and didn't know it. Not one physician mentioned it to me during my treatment. It was only years later, after my recovery, when I was trying to understand what had actually happened to me, that I read what dehydration does to a body past 60. Your lymphatic system, the network responsible for collecting and removing cellular waste and damaged DNA, runs almost entirely on water. When you are dehydrated, that system slows, damaged cells accumulate, inflammation rises, and chronic inflammation, the research is now very clear on this, is one of the primary conditions under which cancer initiates and grows. Here is what I do, and what I did during my recovery, without exception. I keep a full glass of filtered water on my nightstand. The moment my feet touch the floor in the morning, before coffee, before food, before I look at anything. I drink all of it, 20 ounces minimum. I add a squeeze of fresh lemon, not for the flavor, though I have come to love it. Lemon peel contains a compound called D-limonene, which has documented anti-tumor activity in laboratory research. I also walk for 30 minutes within the first hour of waking, not a stroll. A pace where I could hold a conversation, but would find it difficult to sing. This matters because movement stimulates lymphatic flow directly. The combination of morning hydration and morning movement compounds the cellular cleansing effect significantly. I have done this every single day for over 30 years. I have not missed a day due to illness in longer than I can remember. Make of that what you will. The second thing I changed was the food. One of the stranger pieces of advice I received during my illness came from my gastroenterologist, who told me to be very careful about food safety given that my immune system was compromised from treatment. The implication was eat clean, eat cooked, be careful. What no one told me, and what the research has since made very clear, is that your gut microbiome is your immune system's primary manufacturing facility. When I was eating nothing but soft, processed, pasteurized, thoroughly cooked food, I was starving the microbial community my body needed most desperately. It was a woman I met in a recovery group, not a physician, who suggested I try kefir, plain, full, fat, naturally fermented kefir, and a small portion of raw sauerkraut, the kind from the refrigerated section, with nothing but cabbage and salt on the label, not the shelf-stable pasteurized variety. Within 90 days I felt something change. I cannot explain it more precisely than that. A quality of inflammation that had lived behind my eyes and in my joints for years began to quietly retreat. The mechanism involves short-chain fatty acids, particularly one called butyrate, which is produced when beneficial gut bacteria process fiber. Butyrate has been shown to signal precancerous cells to undergo programmed cell death before they can cause harm. It also dramatically reduces systemic inflammation. I eat 1 serving of naturally fermented food every single day. I pair it with garlic or leeks, which feed the beneficial bacteria the fermented foods introduce. This is not expensive. It is not complicated. It has been practiced in traditional food cultures around the world for thousands of years. Western medicine is only now beginning to formally study what those cultures understood intuitively. The third thing was learning to use walking as medicine. I mentioned the morning walk already, but I want to be specific about why it works, because understanding the mechanism helped me stay consistent in a way that simple habit advice never did. Cancer cells have a metabolic characteristic first identified by a biochemist named Otto Warburg in the 1930s and confirmed by hundreds of subsequent studies. They are almost exclusively dependent on glucose for fuel. They are poor at using oxygen for energy. Normal cells can use both. When you engage in sustained moderate intensity movement, the kind that raises your heart rate to somewhere between 55 and 70% of your maximum, you accomplish 2 things simultaneously. You deplete circulating blood glucose, removing the preferred fuel of cancer cells, and you flood your tissues with oxygenated blood, creating a physiological environment that is actively hostile to cancer cell survival. A 2020 analysis of data from 1.4 million adults found that regular moderate physical activity was associated with a 42% reduction in colon cancer risk and a 38% reduction in breast cancer risk. These are extraordinary numbers for something that requires no prescription, no copay, and no referral. I walk 5 minutes 5 days a week before my first full meal. The fasted state amplifies the glucose depleting effect. I walk somewhere with natural morning light whenever possible, because morning sunlight regulates the body's circadian rhythm, which governs immune surveillance, the body's continuous automated process of identifying and destroying abnormal cells. I am 101 years old. I walked this morning. The fourth thing was a vegetable I wish I had known about at 40. If I could go back and give my younger self one specific piece of dietary advice, it would be this: eat broccoli sprouts, prepared correctly, at least 3 times a week. The active compound is called sulforaphane. It is found in all cruciferous vegetables: broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, cabbage, but most potently in raw broccoli sprouts, which contain up to 50 times more sulforaphane per gram than the mature vegetable. What sulforaphane does inside the body is remarkable. It activates a genetic switch called NRF2, which triggers over 200 protective genes simultaneously, genes involved in detoxification, antioxidant defense, and the repair of damaged DNA before it can mutate into cancer. Research from Johns Hopkins documented this. Research from the University of Illinois found a 52% reduction in bladder cancer risk associated with regular sulforaphane consumption. A study from Roswell Park found that sulforaphane targets cancer stem cells, the specific type of cell that conventional chemotherapy often fails to eliminate, and that is responsible for cancer recurrence. Here is the preparation detail that most people get wrong. Sulforaphane is not present in broccoli in its active form. It is created through a chemical reaction triggered when you chop or chew the vegetable, activating an enzyme called myrosinase. Cooking above 140 degrees Fahrenheit destroys that enzyme entirely. Fully cooked broccoli delivers very little active sulforaphane. The correct preparation: chop or crush your broccoli or sprouts. Let them sit for 40 minutes before consuming or cooking. Then steam for no more than 3 to 4 minutes. Raw broccoli sprouts require no cooking at all. I add a small amount of mustard seed powder to cook cruciferous vegetables, which independently contains active myrosinase and restores the enzyme activity that cooking removed, increasing sulforaphane absorption by up to 4-fold. I have eaten some form of cruciferous vegetable prepared this way nearly every day for over 3 decades. The fifth thing was sleep. Of everything I have described, this had the most dramatic immediate effect during my recovery, not because it is the most important in isolation, but because nothing else works properly when this is broken. During deep, slow wave sleep, what researchers call stage 3 and stage 4, your body produces its highest concentrations of melatonin, not simply a sleep hormone, one of the most powerful antioxidants your body manufactures internally. Melatonin directly inhibits tumor angiogenesis, meaning it blocks cancer from building the new blood vessels required for growth. It stimulates natural killer cells, the front-line immune cells whose specific function is to identify and destroy cancer cells before they can establish themselves. Melatonin production declines by up to 70% between the ages of 40 and 70. Most people over 65 are producing negligible amounts during sleep. When I understood this, I restructured my entire evening. I am in bed by 10 o'clock. My room is completely dark. Even small amounts of light suppress melatonin production. My room temperature stays between 65 and 68 degrees Fahrenheit. I stop eating 3 hours before sleep because digestion competes with the cellular repair work the body prioritizes at night. At 8 in the evening, I drink a small glass of tart cherry juice, which contains natural melatonin precursors. Within 6 weeks of beginning this protocol, my energy shifted in a way that was noticeable to everyone around me. My oncologist commented on it at my next appointment. She asked what I had changed. When I told her, she paused for a long moment and said she had never specifically discussed sleep architecture with a cancer patient before. I slept 7.5 hours last night. Sleep the same tonight now. Here is the part I promised you. Everything I have just described is real. The research is real. The results were real. I would encourage anyone facing a serious diagnosis to begin every single one of those practices immediately and without apology. And I need to tell you honestly that in my assessment, looking back across 38 years, what I have described above accounts for perhaps 30% of why I am still here. Let me tell you about the corridor. It was a Wednesday morning in the second year after my diagnosis, during a period when my treatment had plateaued and my numbers had not improved in 3 consecutive months. I was sitting in a chair outside the imaging department, waiting for a scan, and I was very quietly giving up, not dramatically, not with tears, just the private, exhausted acknowledgement that I had tried everything, that I was tired in a way that sleep no longer touched, and that perhaps the most honest thing I could do was stop fighting so hard and let things move at whatever pace they were going to move. A woman sat down next to me. I recognized her after a moment. Her name was Frances. We had met briefly at a medical conference in Chicago nearly 30 years earlier. We had sat next to each other at a dinner and talked for 2 hours about everything except medicine. I had found it slightly irritating at the time. I understand now that that was precisely the point. I would not have recognized her if she had not spoken first, and not because she had aged. Because she had not aged. She was 74 years old. She looked, and I mean this without any exaggeration, the way a healthy and rested person in their mid-40s looks. Clear eyes, easy posture, a quality of calm that felt almost out of place in that corridor, in that light, in that building full of people waiting for news they were afraid of. She was there visiting a colleague on another floor. We talked for perhaps 2 hours. I asked her eventually what she had done, what the explanation was. She smiled the way people smile when they have been waiting for a question and are glad it finally arrived. And she said something I want to share with you as precisely as I can remember it. She said, you understand that your body is not what it appears to be. If you look through a microscope at the tissue of your hand, you do not see solid matter. You see particles in motion. Look deeper than that, past the cellular level, past the molecular level, to the subatomic level, and what you find is not even particles anymore. What you find is energy. Fields of electromagnetic activity, constantly moving, constantly interacting, constantly changing. Your body is, at its most fundamental level, energy, and the physical world around you, the chair you are sitting in, the walls of this corridor, the space between us, is also, at its most fundamental level, energy. This is not a spiritual claim. This is what physics describes. This is what the science demonstrates. She said, given that, there are really only 2 questions that matter about your health. What kind of internal state are you generating? And what are you allowing to persist inside it? She told me she had spent years studying the relationship between thought, emotion, and physical biology, not as abstract philosophy, as practical fact. She described 3 principles she had come to understand not as virtues, but as physiological instructions: truthfulness, compassion, forbearance. She said, anger generates a specific internal chemistry. The stress hormones produced by chronic resentment, hostility, and unresolved conflict suppress immune function, elevate inflammation, and, as a growing body of research in psychoneuroimmunology is beginning to document, create the precise cellular conditions under which cancer initiates and grows. This is not a metaphor, it is biochemistry, but she was pointing at something beneath the biochemistry. She said, think honestly about the life you have lived up to now. How much of your internal life has been spent in conflict? Not necessarily outward conflict, the internal kind, the running tape, the relationships that never resolved, the resentments you kept because they felt like evidence of something you were owed, the quiet anger towards specific people who, years later, still occupy space in your mind they were never invited to keep. I sat with that for a moment. I had lived, I realized as she said it, in a state of nearly continuous low-level conflict for most of my adult life, with a former colleague who had undermined me early in my career in a way I had never fully addressed, with my ex-husband, from whom I had been separated for 11 years, and toward whom I still carried something I had never examined directly, with my own mother, who had died before I found the words for what I needed to say to her, with myself, perhaps most consistently of all, the version of myself that had never quite believed she was enough. I had never considered myself a bitter person. I had never acted in ways that crossed any line, but the tape had been running for decades, quietly, constantly, consuming energy my body needed for other things. Francis said those thoughts are not passive. They are generative. Every sustained state of resentment or bitterness, regardless of whether it is justified, regardless of whether the other person deserves it, creates a chemistry that you are producing inside your own body, and that chemistry returns to you, not as punishment, as simple cause and effect at a scale we don't normally think about. She said conversely, genuine compassion, not performed, not strategic, but the real internal state of wishing other people well, including the ones who hurt you, generates a different chemistry entirely, and that chemistry also returns. I went home that evening and lay in the dark for a long time and thought about my life as honestly as I ever had. I thought about the colleague and the 11 years of quiet resentment I had been carrying like something valuable I was owed. I thought about my ex-husband and the ways I had held on to that particular story, long after it had stopped serving any purpose except to confirm something I had already decided. I thought about my mother and the conversation we never had. I thought about myself, the woman who had wanted other things at 25, who had made different choices than she intended, who had never fully forgiven herself for the distance that had grown between her and her daughter during the years when work came first. And I began, slowly, without drama, without any clean moment of transformation, to let it go, not because the grievances were wrong. Some of them were entirely legitimate, not because forgiveness meant that what had happened was acceptable, but because I finally understood, in a way that felt physical rather than philosophical, that the person those thoughts were harming was me. I was the one living inside them, not the people I was thinking about. Me. I began to practice what Frances had described. I did not become someone different overnight. I am not telling you I found peace and was immediately healed. I am telling you that over the following 12 months, something in my body changed. My inflammation markers improved in ways my oncology team could not fully explain against the backdrop of my treatment plan. My energy returned. My scans at the 1-year mark prompted my oncologist to use a word she had previously told me she was reluctant to use. Remission, and then at the 2-year mark, a word she said she had genuinely not expected to say, clear. I am not asking you to believe that the internal work alone produced this outcome. I believe the food mattered. I believe the sleep mattered. I believe the walking and the water and the sulforaphane all played real roles in a real biological process. What I am asking you to consider is that you may be working very hard on 30% of the problem. The other 70% is quieter. It does not come in a bottle. It does not have a clinical trial yet, though the field of psychoneuroimmunology is moving faster than most people realize. It does not appear on the list of recommendations your doctor gives you. Not because your doctor is wrong, but because medicine, for all its brilliance, is still learning to study the places where internal state and biology intersect. Frances lived to 91. She told me the last time we spoke that she had not been seriously ill, not once. In over 28 years, I believe her. I have no framework that fully accounts for her. I have only the evidence of my own life, which is now 101 years long and still, on most mornings, feels like it has something left worth staying for. Here is what I want you to take from this. Start with the water tomorrow morning. Add the walking. Add the fermented foods and the broccoli sprouts and the sleep. These things are real and they will help you, and they cost almost nothing. And then, when you have a quiet evening, and no one is asking anything of you, sit honestly with this question: how much of your internal life is being spent on the running tape? Who are you still in conflict with, inside the privacy of your own mind, that you haven't spoken to in years? What would it cost you? Not to excuse what happened, not to pretend it was acceptable, but simply to put it down, to genuinely wish those people well and release them from the space they have been occupying in you. I don't know what your answer will be. I know what mine was. I know that I am 101 years old, and I walked this morning in the early light, and my apartment needs tidying, and my daughter is coming to visit next week, and I am not afraid of anything. That is the whole story. I hope some part of it is useful to you. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, not because I need the views. At one-on-one, I am well past caring about any of that, but because if there is one person in your life who is fighting something difficult and quietly running out of reasons to keep going, this story belongs to them.